Welcome to Uncovering Your Impact. My name is Shelley Schnupp. I am with Spectrum Nonprofit Services. We are a firm that works with nonprofit organizations on strategy development for sustainability, focusing especially on impact, finances, and aspects of leadership. So we're delighted that you're with us today. So you'll be joining us as we offer a snapshot of a tool we've found to be helpful for organizations in clarifying, capturing, and communicating how they make a difference, which is really important these days. I encourage you as we move along to use the chat box if you have questions, and my colleague, Alexander, will alert me if there are questions. And we'll also have time at the end. So please feel free to propose questions during or at the end of this session. So let's get started. The tool we'll be looking at today is the Impact Strategy tool. This is a simple but really quite effective tool. It's similar to a logic model or a theory of change, as it represents sort of cause and effect cycles. While logic models are often used to map out individual programs, the impact strategy document focuses on the full organization. We start with mission and reading the chart from a counterclockwise perspective down through intended impact, outcomes, then strategies, and the chart looking at it from that perspective ends in programs, reflecting the day-to-day activities of the organization. Now, read in this manner, the impact strategy document will answer the question, how does the organization accomplish this? Now, read the other way, read clockwise, starting with programs, the template tends to answer the question of why does the organization perform this activity? Finally, another way to look at the impact strategy is that it captures what the organization does, the initial impact of what it does, and the impact made toward mission. Let's take a look at how to develop your own impact strategy. It starts with mission impact. Since we typically already have a mission, defining the organization's impact, or I should say intended impact, is really the most important part of this tool. Impact tends to drive everything. You know, if we don't know where we're going, how are we going to get there? I think we've heard that a few times. But in addition to that, how will we know that we got there? So starting with mission impact is really important. We encourage organizations to define an intended impact statement. An impact statement tends to be a series of statements about what the organization is trying to achieve and will hold itself accountable for within some manageable period of time. Keep in mind that it defines both the benefits of the organization seeks to provide as well as the beneficiaries. And with many nonprofit organizations, our ambitions tend to be bold, and therefore the time frame of the intended impact may be quite some time. But let's look at a few examples. Here, with this organization, Quantum Leap Farm, the impact statement is obviously different than the mission. The mission tends to describe the organization's general purpose, often leaving room for a very broad range regarding who is served and the possibilities for what success looks like. So pretty general. Now, when we switch over to the intended impact statement, sorry about that, we start to get more specific about who is served and why they are served and what that improved quality of life truly means in this context. You know, improved quality of life may mean very different things to different audiences. So our intended impact statement tries to get more specific. It also indicates how improved quality of life will be measured. Let's look at another example. With this example from Goodwill, the intended impact further specifies which people are the focus for services. It also more clearly defines what success should look like. So you get a much clearer picture of the impact the organization is trying to have on who it serves and how it will hold itself accountable, what it will actually look like to determine if success happens. There are different ways to get at your organization's intended impact, and asking the right questions can really help. In addition to that, involving the board and staff in responding to questions like these, whether in a meeting or in a survey, can help you understand how impact is viewed by different folks within the organization. You can look at where there is synergy, sort of common understanding, or where there's actual disparity. And this can provide the basis for some really important conversations, about the organization's purpose. Reaching agreement on intended impact is an important step, though, toward organizational sustainability. Certainly, it provides the basis for organizational decisions about strategies and programming, as well as revenue development and budgeting. So again, nailing that intended impact statement probably is the most important step toward using this tool. Here's one tool that organizations can use to get at intended impact. We call this our intended impact outline, and it can be used as a worksheet to capture the input we talked about a moment ago, different points of view from the organization's board member or staff about the aspects of impact. The who and where section we've found over and over again is especially important for organizations struggling to define their primary beneficiaries. You'll notice that it allows for different levels of beneficiaries, and it encourages the organization to identify those who we believe benefit, and to zero in on the core beneficiaries. So sometimes organizations want to say, well, our beneficiaries are who we serve, it's the broader community. But this tool and this who and where portion of this tool or this impact outline can help organizations acknowledge that, yes, perhaps the broader community is a beneficiary of our work, the work we do, but there are also those at the very core of what we do who benefit most directly. So I especially like this part of the impact outline in that it helps organizations zero in on and have the discussions about who the organization benefits and who is at the core of those beneficiaries. You'll see impact, measures, long-term value, and how an organization actually achieves its impact. And an organization, you can actually pull from the questions, the impact questions we looked at a moment ago, and fill this outline in, and that will give you good information and the basis for starting this main document, the impact strategy. So here's an example of one organization's mission and intended impact. You'll see that it shows how a very important yet very broad mission can be further defined, reflecting the needs of a local community and providing clear direction for action and decision making. The intended impact statement tries to capture eventually what the organization does and should help define what the organization doesn't do, where it focuses its attention, where it focuses resources, And a good impact statement should provide direction for strategies and programming. Strategies and programming are important because they define how we're going to achieve outcomes that are necessary for achieving our intended impact. So this first section, getting this first section right is critical. If we're not clear about the intended impact, it's going to be hard to build out a good impact strategy that can really help the organization. Let's look at another section of the impact strategy document. Now, most of us are familiar with the concept of outcomes. We've had it beaten into us, we've had it beaten out of us. But really, outcomes we've learned over the years are critical. It's what our funders want to hear. It's what keeps us understanding whether we're making a difference or not. Defining outcomes is certainly not an option anymore, is expected of organizations. So here we view outcomes as what is achieved through the organization's work that is necessary. That is necessary to have the impact desired. So if we're going to have impact, we have to have direct outcomes from our work. Often viewed as outcomes that are the results of your work, they're dependent upon the outputs of the services executed. So we have our services, we should have outcomes, and outcomes are what lead to the intended impact. And of course, the mission. So in this example, you'll see that the outcomes are primarily those changes that need to occur among those served to achieve the impact of safety and stability as defined in the intended impact statement. They might also include changes in the community that are needed to support the organization's work toward impact. So there's certainly some flexibility here in how outcomes and necessary conditions toward achieving impact are defined. Kind of look at it as the bridge between programs and services and strategies for impact and the intended impact. Any questions come up yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, thanks. So the next section of the impact strategy document is strategies for impact. These are the broader strategies for achieving the outcomes that lead to impact. For example, in an organization I'm working with in Milwaukee, they've become known for their understanding of and focus on trauma-informed care. Now, trauma-informed care is not just one individual program. It really is a theme and an approach to program and service delivery that drives organizational decisions and how services are delivered. So in this example, we'll see those general approaches or those strategies for impact needed to achieve the organization's outcomes toward impact. Again, these strategies are broader than individual programs. They actually provide direction for programming. Note the strategies of crisis management, leadership development, addressing bias, advocacy, quality, and culturally competent services, and the utilization of cohorts. Those are general strategies for delivering services, and they're general strategies that the organization has found essential or absolutely necessary for achieving its outcomes. I guess you can think of strategies for impact as what drives how the organization does its work. Finally, we come to programs. And we think about programs, services, and organizational activities, sort of the day-to-day activities of the organization, what the organization does and produces. Programs and how they are delivered are driven by the strategies for impact that we saw a moment ago. At the same time, they are how we deliver on the strategies. So here are the programs and activities designed to achieve outcomes, and they're designed to actually operationalize, if you will, the strategies for impact. And the programs may change periodically. The strategies for impact tend to remain for a while. They're I won't say they're static, but they certainly their lifetime is longer. Again, because they're sort of fundamental approaches to what we do and how we do our work. You know, again, this YWCA that we're using as an example recognizes how critical crisis management is and how important providing culturally competent services is. Emphasizes the importance of women's leadership. So when we come to programs and services, they're designed to be carried out in ways that address those strategies. We don't just provide any kind of childcare assistance. We do so keeping in mind our strategies for impact. And you'll also notice here with the programs, services, and fund development efforts, you'll see them in 3 different sections. Again, this is what the organization does with its resources. So you'll see the grouping of programs. You'll see a small grouping, conference center rental and other space rental, as something the organization does with its time and resources, as well as a listing of 4 resource development types of activities. And some organizations include things like the conference center rental or other space rental as a reminder of these are other organizational activities. So why have an impact strategy? How can organizations benefit from having this type of document? Well, there are a few ways the impact strategy can be used. And they're noted on this slide. This notion of codifying organizational values. Now, you probably noticed there's no specific section on the impact strategy document called values, but they're certainly present and quite explicit. Remember, we saw in the strategies, women's leadership, cultural competence, meeting individuals where they are, and more. So while we don't have a section called values, we believe they tend to be pretty explicit on a good impact strategy document. Another reason to have an impact strategy or a way to use it We've learned over time that it's extremely helpful in developing shared understanding among those involved in its development. And typically we're talking board members, staff members, senior staff members, but it really does test where we are in shared understanding of the organization's purpose as defined by the intended impact. Once we have a shared understanding, this can provide an important framework for action. If we don't have a shared understanding and it comes time to make decisions or take action on opportunities that are presented to us, an organization can be all over the place. But if they have an impact strategy, they have sort of a framework for how the organization thinks, if you will, how the organization thinks about what it does, why it does it, for whom, what outcomes and impact are we working toward. It can really, in addition to that, it can free people up to make and challenge decisions. And it's also a great tool for the board, we've learned, a great summary tool for the board. Similarly, if we're clear about the impact we want to have and the broad strategies in which we believe, that can provide a strong foundation for new ideas to emerge. Sometimes the clearer we are, the freer we are to really think about and dream about what we can be doing. And finally, perhaps the most important benefit of the impact strategy is that it can help us make decisions. It can be the basis for measurement, providing indicators of success that can be tracked for this achievement. And when you think about all of this, ultimately, all of these benefits should serve to strengthen the organization's impact. So once again, looking at this organization's approach at an impact strategy, it's a great way of summarizing and capturing, or maybe taking, if you will, a snapshot of what the organization does, how it does it, the outcomes it hopes to achieve, and the intended impact it wants to make toward the mission. A final tool that I want to share is the intended impact outline. We looked at it earlier. It's often a good way of getting started with thinking about the organization's intended impact, which of course is the most important part of the impact strategy document. There's that who and where section, a section for impact where we can just talk about what we think the impact of the organization is. People can offer their individual perspectives. How we believe we measure, how we do what we do, and sort of the long-term value. And again, information can be collected from board members and staff via a survey. Some of these pieces can be done in a group meeting, but it gives folks an opportunity to share how they see these aspects of the organization, and then how we find synergy amongst different individuals' views. So just a tool that can help you get started on intended impact and also generate some information that can be filled in to the impact strategy document later on. Sometimes the impact strategy document, to just start with this, can be a little bit intimidating for organizations. But breaking it down this way can often be easier. So that's the impact strategy document. What questions do folks have? Any questions?
So we received one question on getting copies of the slides, and to answer that, you will be receiving a recording of today's webinar in your email boxes this week with that, and we can include the slides as well.
And we'll be sharing this document, this template, with folks too, correct?
Correct. It's been shared in the chat, and it will be shared within that same email.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? I see a raised hand.
And Shelley, we had a question on whether or not this is the next iteration of the logic model, or if it's better than that.
Yeah, I think logic models tend to be a little different from the impact strategy document in that, at least in my experience, logic models are often used for individual programs. What I like about the impact strategy document is that it can provide a good summary of the organization overall and the organization's impact. And I'm a fan of logic models. There are certainly different types, but I tend to use them for programs. Anything else? Well, if there are no other questions, we'll close. I certainly want to thank you all for attending, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or if you just want to chat about these tools. I'm certainly happy to do that. So thank you for attending, and thank you from Spectrum Nonprofit for joining us today.